You know, 15 to 20 years ago, I would have likely written off a show like Reacher as generic fast food action porn. I mean, back then, there was no shortage of high-octane action properties, and despite the recommendations from friends, I overlooked many of them as I expected they would have been overrated and bland. However, today's entertainment landscape is barren when it comes to male protagonists who can convincingly kick ass and aren't overshadowed by the women. If Reacher came out back when we had it good with our entertainment, it probably would have been lost in the mire. But today, it feels refreshing and fulfilling. A true callback to a time when men were men. Not the toxic manifestation most people tend to use as an example when they refer to masculinity, but a good, moral man who does everything for others and very little for himself. Based on the book series by Lee Child, Reacher follows the life of Jack Reacher, a former major in the United States Army Military Police Corps who now lives as a drifter, making his way across America for no other reason than, because he fucking can. While on his journeys, he finds himself in the middle of conflicts that go deeper than what's presented on the surface. So he makes it his business to see that anyone on the wrong side of the law gets what's coming to him. He's a well-meaning man, disciplined and well-trained, freakishly huge, and has little tolerance for people who break the law. As I understand it, he's described as a large man in the books, and he's frequently called out for his massive build. Tom Cruise may be an action film expert, but Alan Ritchson fits the description to the letter, and he even put on extra muscle just to be convincing. That sort of dedication does justice to the character. Apart from his intimidating size, he's also a law-abiding citizen, a gentleman, an animal lover, and an honest man. Because of his military background, he's ruthlessly efficient in his investigations, utilizing his tactical skills when the situation calls for hand-to-hand combat as well as firearms, both of which he is proficient in. He can craft pipe bombs and make use of his environment when he's in a pinch. Sounds like an unstoppable force, right? Well, despite his skills, he still takes a hit from time to time, especially when he's taking on multiple foes at once. This kind of detail makes him a more believable character. So often do we see protagonists who plow through enemies with little resistance, and it's never more egregious than when the hero is a woman taking on men twice her size. With Reacher, he can dish out as much as he takes, and he's not above walking away unscathed. Whenever there's a fight, you can be sure he'll be patching himself up in the next scene. Now, I won't lie, there are times when suspension of disbelief asks a bit more than it deserves. As I said, Reacher is a big guy, but some of his feats of strength can put a mild strain on your tolerance for believability. Sometimes these feats come at the right moment when you're practically begging for the payoff to hit, and others, well, feel like they were inserted to make the character look cool, not that he needed much help. Luckily, these brief moments never bog down the story or the clever writing. The strength of Reacher dwells within the writing of the show itself and how it treats the protagonist. He's allowed to be awesome while making mistakes, to which he owns each one. He can be a smartass and difficult to work with, but only with those to whom he believes he can't trust. To anyone he considers a friend, he'll stake his reputation and his life on proving their innocence because he's not the kind of man who opens himself to just anyone. Those precious few he does let into his life are treated with respect. So far, the show has 2 seasons on Prime, and they're both brilliant. Nothing too flashy, just solid storytelling with tons of heart lurking beneath the surface, and a generous portion of badassery sprinkled throughout. I personally love how each season is a self-contained story that neatly wraps things up by season's end. You don't really need to watch the first season to understand the second. You could easily watch the second season and not get lost. Yeah, there are some references to characters from season 1, but they're not essential to the current story. There are no cliffhangers, no mystery boxes that never get resolved, no MacGuffins, and no Mary Sues. Speaking of women, the female characters in this show are some of the best I've seen in ages, particularly season 2. They never degrade the men, mostly because the men and women in season 2 come from the same unit. They've worked together in the past and share a mutual respect for each other. They have each other's backs the way you'd expect soldiers would. They have shared experiences that no one else could comprehend, and it's this understanding that allows them to work together so well. The women in this show complement the men, and the characters react to each other as they should. No talking down, no upstaging, and no belittling. It's as though the showrunners understood who the main character is. Now, there is a lot of good in this show, but I will say that season 2 felt weaker than the first. It's by no means bad, but some of the emotional stakes felt lessened, and the screen time granted to the 2 antagonists should have been swapped. Robert Patrick serves as the guy in charge, while Ferdinand Kingsley is built up through the show, but never shown as a true threat. He's more of a slippery weasel, staying out of harm's reach while Robert Patrick's character struggles to stay ahead of the heroes. All this is minor in the long run. At this point, you can pick your season and enjoy it as is without missing too much from the other. Whatever the story, it'll end with Reacher riding off into the sunset, having left the world a better place. Thus far, the show has been a hit on Prime when you compare its small budget to those of other Prime originals. It's a show about a character from a bygone age that spits in the face of people who would dismiss him as a bad example for superficial reasons. Any life-altering events that take place in Reacher's life are met with a level of optimism and an unrelenting devotion to his morals that keep him going forward despite the tragedies. It's a basic meat and potatoes kind of show that keeps things simple, so you can't go wrong with it.